Paul Newman once revealed the 8 beautiful women of all time. Those blue eyes saw everything. For decades, Paul Newman stood as Hollywood's gold standard of masculine beauty. But it was his assessment of beauty in others that revealed the depth behind those legendary eyes. Newman understood women in a way most men simply don't, revealed a longtime friend who knew him for over 40 years. He didn't just see surface beauty, he saw character, intelligence, the unique qualities that made certain women truly unforgettable. In his later years, after decades of marriage to Joanne Woodward and a career that placed him alongside the most stunning women in film history, Newman occasionally shared private insights about beauty that went far beyond typical Hollywood assessments. Paul was known for his famous quote about fidelity, "Why go out for hamburger when you have steak at home?" explained a director who worked with Newman on multiple films. But that didn't mean he was blind to beauty around him. He just appreciated it differently than most men in Hollywood. Tonight, we reveal Paul Newman's personal list of the 8 most beautiful women of all time. Not just their stunning physical attributes, but the unique qualities that this legendary actor observed in each that elevated them from merely attractive to genuinely unforgettable. Joanne Woodward, the beauty that kept him home. Newman's assessment of the most beautiful women in the world always began and ended with the same name, Joanne Woodward, his wife of 50 years. While Hollywood marriages typically dissolved faster than film in developing solution, Newman and Woodward's relationship stood as the rare exception in an industry built on transient connections. His number one, always, confirmed a family friend who knew the couple for decades. Paul would talk about other beautiful women in that abstract way artists discuss aesthetics, but when he spoke about Joanne, something in his voice changed. It became more intimate, more reverent. Newman famously explained his lifelong fidelity with the now legendary quip, "Why go out for a hamburger when you have steak at home?" But those close to the couple understood that this shorthand explanation barely scratched the surface of what Newman saw in Woodward. Her beauty wasn't loud, it was permanent, Newman once told a journalist during a rare moment of personal candor. Joanne had this quality that revealed itself gradually. The first time you met her, you'd think, yes, she's very attractive. The 10th time, you'd realize you were in the presence of someone extraordinary. Unlike the more obvious bombshell beauty of some of his co-stars, Woodward possessed what Newman described as intelligent beauty, a combination of physical attractiveness, sharp wit, and artistic integrity that created something far more compelling than mere prettiness. Paul appreciated that Joanne was beautiful without being defined by her beauty, explained a director who worked with both actors. She was an Oscar winner before he was, a serious actress who approached her craft with extraordinary intelligence. That combination of talent and beauty created something that Paul found endlessly fascinating. Their marriage wasn't without challenges. Newman's drinking created tensions at certain periods, and the death of their son Scott from drug overdose in 1978 tested the relationship in ways nothing else could. But through it all, Newman's appreciation for his wife's beauty, both physical and spiritual, never diminished. Even in their 70s, you'd catch Paul looking at Joanne across a room with this expression of absolute wonder, remembered a friend who knew them in their later years. It wasn't nostalgia for how she looked when they were young. It was appreciation for who she was at every age. That's remarkably rare, especially in Hollywood. For Newman, Woodward represented beauty that evolved rather than faded, a partner whose attractiveness deepened with shared experience, intellectual growth, and the inevitable marks of time. In an industry obsessed with youth and preservation, Newman's enduring appreciation for his wife offered a different understanding of what makes a woman truly beautiful. As we leave behind the personal connection that defined Newman's life, we turn to a very different kind of beauty, one that embodied a nearly untouchable elegance that eventually ascended to actual royalty.
But, of course, once my children were born here, I began to feel at home, and this is where my...
Grace Kelly, Silence in a Loud Room. When Paul Newman worked with Grace Kelly in 1958 on The Left-Handed Gun, he encountered a woman on the verge of a transformation that would remove her from Hollywood forever. Having recently married Prince Rainier III of Monaco, Kelly was completing her final film obligations before retiring from acting to assume her duties as Princess of Monaco. He called her the "The kind of woman you can't forget 5 minutes after meeting," recalled a crew member who worked on that production. There was something about Grace that seemed to exist in a different register than everyone else on set. While filmmaking is typically chaotic, loud, and frantic, she moved through it all with this remarkable composure that made everyone else seem slightly out of control by comparison. Newman's appreciation for Kelly went beyond her obvious physical beauty to focus on the extraordinary self-possession that set her apart from other actresses of the era. While many beautiful women in Hollywood worked to command attention, Kelly exuded a quiet confidence that drew focus without apparent effort. She looked like silence in a loud room, Newman reportedly observed to a friend after working with her. Grace didn't need to raise her voice or make dramatic entrances. She simply existed with such perfect clarity that everything around her seemed slightly disordered by comparison. This quality of composed elegance wasn't an act for Kelly, but a genuine expression of her character. Raised in a wealthy Philadelphia family with strong values around propriety and social conduct, she brought to Hollywood a refinement that seemed almost from another era, and ultimately led her to a life that suited those qualities perfectly. Newman once said that Grace Kelly was the only actress he knew who seemed more natural as a princess than as a movie star, shared a film historian. He meant it as high praise, that her inherent dignity and elegance were so genuine that assuming royal duties seemed like a natural evolution rather than an imposed role. What particularly impressed Newman about Kelly was how her beauty operated independently of her surroundings. While many actresses were greatly enhanced by Hollywood lighting, makeup, and cinematography, Kelly's appearance remained remarkably consistent regardless of context. Elegant, cool, regal, even before she became a princess, noted someone who worked with her during her Hollywood years. Most beautiful women are at their best in controlled environments with perfect lighting. Grace looked exactly the same walking through the commissary at lunchtime as she did on camera. That kind of beauty that doesn't require context or enhancement is extraordinarily rare. For Newman, Kelly represented a particular kind of American paradox, a woman who embodied democratic values while possessing an inherent nobility that made her transition to European royalty seem almost inevitable. Her beauty wasn't just in her features, but in the remarkable consistency between her outer appearance and inner character. While Kelly embodied cool elegance, our next subject represented something entirely different, a passionate intensity that Newman found equally compelling, but for very different reasons.
Marital togetherness. I think
especially if you have no...
Elizabeth Taylor, the woman who detonated rooms. If Grace Kelly represented composed elegance, Elizabeth Taylor embodied passionate intensity. Newman encountered Taylor multiple times throughout their careers, though they never co-starred in a film together. What struck him about her wasn't just her legendary beauty, but the volcanic energy that seemed to radiate from her. Newman admired her intensity and her violet eyes, recalled a producer who worked with both stars during the 1960s. While many beautiful women in Hollywood seemed to cultivate an air of untouchable perfection, Elizabeth was all passion and presence. She owned her beauty in a way that was almost challenging, daring you to look away when you knew you couldn't. Taylor's beauty was famously enhanced by her unique violet eyes, a genetic rarity that gave her gaze a hypnotic quality unlike any other actress of her generation. But Newman recognized that her appeal went far beyond this distinctive feature to encompass her entire approach to life, one marked by emotional intensity, courage in the face of health challenges, and an unapologetic approach to her own desires. "She didn't enter the room. She detonated it," Newman reportedly commented after attending an industry event where Taylor was present. "There are beautiful women who want to be admired from a distance. Elizabeth wanted to be experienced up close to make everyone in her vicinity feel something, whether that was attraction, intimidation, or envy." This quality made Taylor a uniquely powerful presence in Hollywood. Where many beautiful women of her era were carefully managed by studios to maintain an image of pristine perfection, Taylor lived openly with all her complications and contradictions on full display, her multiple marriages, health struggles, weight fluctuations, and passionate causes all part of a life lived without filters. "Called her volcanic, beautiful in a way that burned," remembered a mutual friend. Paul had tremendous respect for how Elizabeth never hid the challenging parts of her life. While other stars of their generation went to great lengths to conceal problems or vulnerabilities, she faced everything publicly with remarkable courage. He found that authenticity extremely beautiful. Taylor's willingness to age publicly, rather than disappearing from view when she no longer matched Hollywood's youthful ideal, particularly impressed Newman. In an industry that often discarded women once they passed a certain age, Taylor continued to command attention and respect through every phase of her life. Newman once said Elizabeth was the only star he knew who seemed to actually enjoy growing older, shared a director who worked with both actors. She didn't fight age with desperation like so many in Hollywood. She simply incorporated each life phase into her evolving identity. That kind of self-acceptance struck Paul as a particularly beautiful quality in an industry built on illusion and preservation. For Newman, Taylor represented beauty with courage behind it, a woman whose physical attributes were extraordinary, but whose willingness to live authentically made her truly memorable. In an era when most beautiful women were carefully controlled products of the studio system, Taylor's refusal to be managed made her something far more fascinating. From Taylor's American intensity, we turn to international glamour, the Italian actress whose combination of earthy sensuality and sophisticated intelligence created a beauty that transcended boundaries.
My autobiography, and this did go on the air about
Sophia Loren, the woman who made men irrelevant. Newman worked with Sophia Loren in 1967's Lady L, experiencing firsthand the extraordinary presence of the Italian actress who had conquered Hollywood without ever fully becoming part of it. What struck him about Loren wasn't just her obvious physical beauty, but the remarkable self-possession she brought with her. He once said she had the kind of face that makes you forget your name, recalled a crew member who worked on the production. Sophia wasn't just physically beautiful, though she certainly was that. She had this extraordinary confidence, this absolute comfort in her own skin that made her beauty seem like simply one aspect of a completely integrated person rather than her defining quality. Unlike many international actresses who attempted to downplay their origins to better fit into American film, Loren proudly maintained her Italian identity. Her accent, her curvaceous figure that defied Hollywood's typically thin ideal, and her passionate approach to both work and life all proudly on display. Her mix of strength and sensuality made a lasting impression, noted a director who worked with both stars. Sophia represented a different ideal than the typical American beauty of that era. She was unapologetically womanly, intellectually sharp, and completely uninterested in making herself smaller or less noticeable to accommodate anyone's discomfort with her power. This refusal to diminish herself particularly impressed Newman, who observed how Loren moved through Hollywood with a confidence that many American actresses struggled to maintain in an industry that constantly evaluated and criticized women's appearances. Every man in the room was irrelevant when she walked in, Newman reportedly commented after attending a premiere where Loren was present. What made Sophia extraordinary wasn't just how she looked. It was that she never seemed to need anyone's approval for how she looked. She carried herself with this absolute certainty that she was enough exactly as she was. Loren's beauty was enhanced by her willingness to use her face expressively in performances, unlike many beautiful actresses who carefully maintained composed expressions to protect their image. She laughed broadly, cried convincingly, and created characters with emotional depth rather than simply presenting a perfect facade. Newman admired that she was an actress first and a beauty second, explained someone familiar with both of their careers. While many gorgeous women in film seemed afraid to appear less than perfect on screen, Sophia would take roles that required her to look disheveled, aged, or distraught if the character demanded it. That artistic integrity made her beauty more authentic, because it wasn't something she felt she needed to protect at all costs. For Newman, Loren embodied a particularly European understanding of feminine beauty, one that embraced maturity, intellectual depth, and natural physical attributes rather than pursuing the youthful, often surgically enhanced ideal that would later come to dominate Hollywood. Her comfort with herself created a beauty that seemed to grow rather than diminish with time. From Loren's sophisticated sensuality, we turn to a very different type of beauty, the French actress who brought a revolutionary natural quality to screen beauty that changed cinema forever.
How do you pronounce your name?
Brigitte Bardot.
Brigitte Bardot. And when were you born?
28th of September.
Brigitte Bardot, the hypnotic rule breaker. Though Newman never worked directly with Brigitte Bardot, like most of the world, He was struck by the French actress's singular impact on definitions of beauty in the late 1950s and early 1960s. Bardot represented something entirely new, a natural, seemingly untamed beauty that broke dramatically from the carefully constructed glamour that had dominated cinema. Newman said Bardot had that raw, undone look, like the rules didn't apply to her, recalled a friend who discussed cinema with Newman frequently. What made her so revolutionary wasn't just her obvious physical attributes, but how she presented them, with this casual disregard for the careful poise and perfect styling that had defined female stars before her. Where previous screen beauties were products of meticulous studio management, every hair in place, makeup precisely applied, movements carefully choreographed, Bardot introduced a tousled, spontaneous quality that suggested a woman living for her own pleasure rather than for audience approval. She wasn't polished, she was hypnotic, Newman reportedly observed after watching And God Created Woman, the film that made Bardot an international sensation. Most beautiful women in film seemed to be asking for the audience's admiration. Bardot seemed completely uninterested in approval. She moved like someone who was entirely inside her own experience rather than performing it for others. This quality made Bardot extraordinarily modern, a harbinger of the 1960s sexual revolution and changing attitudes about women's autonomy. Her beauty wasn't just in her features, but in the freedom she embodied, presenting female sexuality as natural and self-directed, rather than carefully packaged for male approval. He admired how natural and unfiltered her beauty was, explained a film historian who discussed Bardot's impact with Newman. Before Bardot, even the most beautiful actresses projected a certain careful restraint, a sense that they were always aware of being watched. Brigitte moved like someone who had forgotten the camera was there. That unself-consciousness created a completely different kind of appeal. Bardot's impact extended far beyond her films to influence fashion, hairstyles, and makeup throughout the 1960s. The Bardot look, tousled hair, minimal makeup with emphasized eyes, and a carefree sensuality represented a dramatic break from the structured, formal beauty standards that had dominated the post-war period. For Newman, Bardot represented beauty as revolution, a woman who changed cultural standards not through careful calculation, but through the sheer force of her natural presence. In an industry built on artifice, her seemingly effortless appeal suggested new possibilities for how women could present themselves both on screen and in life. From Bardot's natural sensuality, we turn to a very different kind of beauty, one built on grace, elegance, and a unique kind of luminous presence that seemed to come from another world entirely.
You don't give me everything I want, you give me everything you want to give me.
Audrey Hepburn, the woman who floated. Of all the women on Newman's list, Audrey Hepburn perhaps represented the greatest departure from conventional Hollywood beauty standards of her era. In a time dominated by voluptuous figures and obvious sensuality, Hepburn's slender frame, delicate features, and ballerina-like grace created a completely different kind of appeal, one that Newman found particularly fascinating. Graceful, kind, and striking in her own quiet way, noted someone who worked with both actors. While most Hollywood beauty demanded attention, Audrey's had this remarkable quality of drawing you in, making you lean forward rather than sit back. Paul was particularly struck by that difference, how her presence operated as an invitation rather than a declaration. Hepburn's unconventional beauty was initially considered a liability in Hollywood. Studio executives famously worried that her slim build and distinctive features were too far from the Marilyn Monroe ideal that dominated the 1950s. Yet her unique appearance ultimately created something more enduring than conventional prettiness could have achieved. He praised her eyes that looked like they'd seen another world, recalled a director who discussed Hepburn with Newman. There was something in her gaze that suggested depths of experience beyond her years, a quality that came partly from her difficult childhood during the war in Europe, but also seemed innately part of who she was. Paul found that combination of vulnerability and wisdom extraordinarily compelling. Unlike many beautiful women who use their appearance as a form of power, Hepburn's approach to her beauty was characterized by a remarkable humility. She consistently downplayed her looks in interviews, focused attention on her work with humanitarian causes, and seemed genuinely uninterested in the sex symbol status that many actresses actively cultivated. She didn't flirt. She floated, Newman reportedly commented after attending an event where Hepburn was present. Most beautiful women in Hollywood move through space as if aware of the effect they created. Audrey moved with this remarkable lightness, like someone dancing through life rather than deliberately creating an impression. It was mesmerizing precisely because it seemed so uncontrived. This natural grace extended to how Hepburn aged. While many stars of her era either attempted to preserve their youthful appearance through increasingly desperate measures or disappeared from public view entirely, Hepburn transitioned gracefully into her later years, focusing on her humanitarian work with UNICEF and allowing herself to age naturally. Newman once said that Audrey was the only beautiful woman he knew who became more rather than less herself with age, shared a mutual friend. While so many stars seemed diminished when their youthful beauty faded, Audrey seemed to grow into the person she was always meant to be. Her work with children, her quiet dignity, her grace in facing her own mortality, all of it reflected a beauty that transcended the physical. For Newman, Hepburn represented beauty as character made visible, the external manifestation of internal qualities that gave her physical attributes a meaning beyond mere aesthetics. Her unique appeal couldn't be reduced to measurements or features, but emerged from the complete integration of her appearance with her authentic self. From Hepburn's ethereal grace, we turn to a very different kind of beauty, one built on strength, confidence, and a uniquely American brand of sophisticated cool.
The first one, of course, gave me a life, so that obviously is the most special of all.
Lauren Bacall, the most dangerous woman in a cocktail dress. Newman encountered Lauren Bacall multiple times throughout their careers, though they never co-starred together. What struck him about Bacall wasn't just her obvious beauty, but the remarkable self-possession she projected from her very first film, a confidence so pronounced that it transformed her from merely attractive to genuinely formidable. That voice, those eyes. Newman once said, "She could unnerve you with one glance," remembered a producer who knew both stars. Lauren had this extraordinary quality of seeming completely in command of herself and her surroundings from the moment she appeared on screen. While most young actresses projected a certain malleability or eagerness to please, Bacall, even at 19 in her first film with Bogart, projected absolute certainty. This confidence was partly cultivated. Director Howard Hawks famously coached the nervous young actress to lower her voice and limit her movements to create her signature cool persona. But what began as technique quickly became integrated into Bacall's authentic presence, creating a woman who moved through Hollywood with remarkable assurance. Called her the most dangerous woman in a cocktail dress, noted someone who observed their interaction at industry events. Paul meant it as high praise, that Lauren had this remarkable ability to enter a room and immediately establish herself as a force to be reckoned with. She didn't use typical feminine wiles or obvious sexuality. Her power came from her intelligence, wit, and absolutely unshakable sense of self. Bacall's beauty operated differently from many of her contemporaries. Where others might rely on conventional prettiness or obvious sensuality, she created appeal through attitude. The famous look, with her chin lowered and eyes raised, her sardonic delivery of dialogue, her willingness to stand her ground with powerful men in an era when that was rarely encouraged. She didn't try to be beautiful, she tried to win, and did, Newman reportedly commented after watching one of Bacall's classic performances with Bogart. What made Lauren extraordinary was that she never seemed to be seeking approval. From her very first scene in To Have and Have Not, she established herself as an equal to Bogart rather than an accessory. That confidence created a much more compelling kind of beauty than mere prettiness could have achieved. This quality made Bacall remarkably modern even in her earliest films. While many actresses of the 1940s and 50s portrayed women defined by their relationships to men, Bacall consistently created characters with their own agency, intelligence, and clear boundaries, qualities that made her more rather than less attractive. For Newman, Bacall represented beauty as strength made visible, the external manifestation of an uncompromising character that gave her physical attributes a meaning beyond mere aesthetics. Her appeal wasn't in fitting conventional standards, but in establishing new possibilities for how a beautiful woman could occupy space in the world. From Bacall's sophisticated strength, we turn to our final subject, the 1970s actress whose distinctive quality of vulnerable authenticity created a different kind of appeal for a changing era.
How did it go?
Ali MacGraw, the look of heartbreak before it happened. Newman encountered Ali MacGraw during the transitional period of early 1970s Hollywood, when definitions of beauty were shifting from the polished glamour of earlier decades toward a more natural, accessible quality that reflected broader cultural changes. McGraw represented this evolution perfectly. Her fresh-faced beauty and emotional transparency creating a new template for screen appeal. He praised her rawness and vulnerability in the 70s, recalled a director who discussed changing screen ideals with Newman. Ali arrived at a moment when audiences were tired of artifice and hungry for authenticity. Her beauty wasn't constructed like the studio stars of earlier eras. It felt discovered rather than created, which made her immediately relatable in a way previous generations of stars hadn't been. McGraw's breakthrough in Love Story, 1970, established her as the face of a new, more emotionally direct kind of beauty. Unlike the carefully maintained composure of earlier screen icons, she brought a quality of emotional transparency that made her both beautiful and seemingly accessible. Said she had eyes that made men rethink their entire lives, noted someone who observed Newman's reaction to McGraw's performances. What Paul found compelling about Ali wasn't just her obvious physical beauty, but how directly she conveyed emotion through her expressions. She didn't have the protective layer most beautiful actresses developed. Everything she felt seemed immediately visible, which created this extraordinary intimacy with the audience. This quality of emotional openness made McGraw particularly effective in romantic dramas, where her ability to convey genuine feeling created connections with viewers that more technically perfect but emotionally guarded actresses couldn't achieve. Her beauty wasn't just in her features, but in her willingness to be emotionally present. She looked like heartbreak before it happened, Newman reportedly commented after watching Love Story. Most beautiful actresses work to conceal vulnerability, seeing it as undermining their power. Ali did exactly the opposite. She made vulnerability her strength, creating this extraordinary quality of someone whose capacity for feeling made her more rather than less compelling. For Newman, McGraw represented the evolution of beauty standards in American film, a shift from the constructed perfection of studio-era glamour toward a more natural, emotionally accessible quality that reflected broader cultural changes of the 1970s. Her appeal lay not in flawless features, but in the authentic humanity visible beneath the surface. As we look back at Newman's assessment of these 8 extraordinary women, what emerges isn't a conventional list of the most physically perfect faces of their eras, but a thoughtful exploration of how true beauty transcends mere appearance to encompass character, intelligence, and authentic presence. From Joanne Woodward's enduring appeal that kept him faithful for 50 years to Grace Kelly's regal composure, from Elizabeth Taylor's volcanic intensity to Sophia Loren's confident sensuality, from Brigitte Bardot's natural freedom to Audrey Hepburn's ethereal grace, from Lauren Bacall's commanding strength to Ali McGraw's emotional transparency, Newman recognized that genuine beauty operates on multiple levels simultaneously. What makes Newman's perspective particularly valuable isn't just his own legendary status as a Hollywood icon, but the thoughtfulness with which he considered what makes certain women truly unforgettable. In an industry often criticized for its superficial assessment of women's worth, Newman consistently looked beyond surface attributes to appreciate the character and intelligence that animated physical beauty. He was married, he was faithful, but he wasn't blind, observed a longtime friend who knew the actor well. Paul's appreciation of these women reveals something important about beauty itself, that the most compelling kind doesn't exist in isolation, but emerges from the integration of appearance with authentic character. The women who made his list weren't just pretty faces. They were complete human beings whose beauty reflected something genuine about who they truly were. This understanding of beauty as character made visible informed not just Newman's professional assessments, but his personal choices as well. His legendary devotion to Joanne Woodward reflected his recognition that true beauty deepens rather than diminishes with time and shared experience, a perspective that ran counter to Hollywood's typical emphasis on youth and novelty. For those seeking to understand Newman beyond his famous blue eyes and celebrated career, his reflections on beauty offer a window into the depth of thought and feeling that made him not just a movie star, but a man of genuine substance. Someone who saw beyond surfaces to appreciate the extraordinary complexity of the women who crossed his path during a remarkable life in film. If you enjoyed this exploration of Paul Newman's perspectives on beauty, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more insights into Hollywood's golden age. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about which of these legendary beauties you find most compelling, or what other aspects of classic Hollywood you'd like us to explore in future videos. Until next time, remember that true beauty, as Paul Newman understood so well, isn't just what catches the eye. It's what captures the imagination and stays in the heart long after the first impression fades.